Let me start with a survey. We're going to talk about the unstoppable force and why the baby boom is what it is and what it means to small business in the United States. You are not alone. I know you're in an industry where selling is difficult. So are contractors. So are break-fix IT companies that serve small businesses because everything's going into the cloud. There are other businesses where the changes have made it more difficult to just go out and find a third-party buyer. But this is a general problem that all small business owners are facing. So first, the survey. How many of you were born before this event? 1945, the dropping of the first atomic bomb. Anybody here born before that? Okay. How many of you were born after this event, 1964? The Beatles come to America. 1, 2, 3, Amanda.
After?
4. Okay.
Just say
After. Yeah. The rest of us are boomers, right?
Yeah.
Baby boomers. The largest, most influential, most successful, and most competitive generation in history, and I'm not just patting us on the back. Okay? The numbers prove it. We're going to talk about the numbers today. Peter Drucker said, I don't predict the future. I look at what has happened already and point out the inevitable result. This is gravity. I can't change the birth rates of 60 years ago or 40 years ago or 20 years ago. They exist. They're done. We can't go back and have one more baby in the 60s. We can't have one more baby in the 80s. Those are done, right? So this is what's happening. Boomer birth chart. Where it all starts, right? 1945, GIs come home from World War II. They start forming families at an extremely rapid rate. They're trying to catch up, right? They saw death, they saw destruction. Most of them thought they weren't going to make it back at least once or twice during their service. And when they came back, they started getting married and having kids like my dad did. Other seminal events that affected the boomers, 1946, as the baby boom begins, Dr. Benjamin Spock puts out Baby and Child Care. The best-selling book, second only to the Bible in the entire 20th century. Everybody started raising Spock babies. And Spock said, don't regiment your child. Don't say that he or she has to speak at 11 months and be potty trained at 17 months. Let them do what they want. Let them progress at their own rate. Let the family center around what the child needs, not what you want the child to do. And whether you know it or not, we all raise our kids as Spock babies now, right? I mean, the whole attitude towards children has changed. You know, I used to run in, even my parents who raised me as a Spock baby, but I would run in and say, look what I found in the yard. My parents would say, the adults are speaking. Now what happens when the kid runs in and says, look what I found in the backyard? Everything stops. Oh, honey, that is a beautiful leaf. It's incredible that you found a leaf in the backyard, right? That's what, so we're all raising Spock babies. We raise Spock babies too. The speed with which children's activities took over the United States was phenomenal. In 1947, the first Little League team was formed. By 1955, Little League was active in all 48 states. 8 years to spread across the entire country. Hula-hoops, slinkies, Play-Doh. If you could catch on with an inexpensive toy that boomer kids liked, you were going to be a zillionaire. So by 1965, 2 out of every 5 people in the United States are under 21. Today, that is a third world profile. That's a developing nation profile. We're the richest country in the world with a developing nation demographic. So everybody's paying attention to the kids. The other thing that affected boomers, television. We are the first electronic media generation. They didn't even consider television to be electronic media. But we were the first generation to all see the same thing at the same time. Before that, we were regional. Yankee kids were raised to be Yankee adults. Southern kids were raised to be Southern adults. West Coast kids were raised to be West Coast adults. I was a Yankee kid. I was born and raised in New Jersey. was in my 20s before I heard of okra. I had no idea what it was. Rhubarb pie? Still haven't had it. So, but all of a sudden, we all had the same experience at the same time. From the Kennedy assassination to the shuttle explosion, we all saw it instantly. First person who figured this out was this genius right here, Walter Disney. He figured out what television could do. Television during the day was for stay-at-home moms, right? One life to live as the world turns, okay? In the evening, Dad took over the TV. Gunsmoke, Maverick. Have Gun Will Travel, right? Dragnet. In the afternoon, between when school let out and dinner time, it was the kids' television, right? Mickey Mouse Club. Disney figured out how to market directly to children without asking their parents' permission. And the kids came in droves into Mom cooking dinner in the kitchen and said, Mommy, Mommy, I need to have Mouseketeer ears. And if you want to understand the impact of the boomers, in those days, Woolworths had Mouseketeer ears for a while, but mostly if you wanted them, they came by mail order from Disney. And when I say mail order, I mean mail order. No online catalogs, no internet, no credit cards, no 800 numbers. If you wanted a pair of Mouseketeer ears, you had to put money in an envelope and send it to Anaheim, California, and they would mail you back a pair of Mouseketeer ears for your kid. From 1957 to the mid-1960s, Disney shipped 25,000 pairs of Mouseketeer ears every single day. That's the economic impact of the boomers. Social norms. I talk about Barbie because I think Barbie is one of the most influential toys in the history of the United States. Before Barbie, all dolls were baby dolls. That was the only purpose for a doll, was to train young girls to be mommies. You fed them, you diapered them, some of them had little cat toys in them, you turned them upside down, they went wah, right? But that's all it was, baby dolls, unless they're porcelain collectibles. When Barbie came out, girls' fantasy play changed completely. With Barbie, they could be anything they wanted. Barbie started out as a hipster, and a homemaker, but she soon became a secretary, and then as time went on in the 70s with women's liberation, she became a lawyer and a doctor. Barbie the president was 20 years before Hillary ran. Barbie the astronaut, Barbie the construction worker. There have been hundreds and hundreds of versions of Barbie for little girls to play with, except one. A book to the first person that can tell me what version of Barbie has never gone on the market. John, what can't Barbie do? No, it's true. What life role has Barbie never fulfilled? You got it. There has never been a mommy Barbie. There are no Barbie babies. So all of a sudden, from the mid-1950s on with Barbie, the most popular girls' toy in history, little girls could fantasize about any role in life they want, except the one that before the 50s they were always trained for with dolls. We'll see what happens with that as time goes on. Education. You'll see this hockey stick graph over and over whenever we talk about the boomers. 1967, the first boomers turned 21. Look what happens with college graduations. A 300% increase in college graduations. So they're flooding the market with college-educated kids. The colleges couldn't handle it. They weren't ready for this pig in the python effect. If any of you went to city schools in a populated area when you were kids, anybody here remember double sessions? Yeah. Double sessions in elementary school? Some kids went in the morning, some kids went in the afternoon, because they didn't have room for all of us. I talked to somebody from Brooklyn who went to triple sessions. There was one session started at like 6:30 in the morning, then there was a midday session, and the last session finished about 5:30 at night. because they didn't have room. Colleges didn't have room. In the 1960s, we opened over 450 new colleges in the United States. Now a lot of them are universities. And I stuck this in because this collective impact is so huge. Those countries are the pigs. Portugal, Italy, Greece, and Spain. The four sick economies of Europe. And statistically, they share one thing. For the last 30 years, they've had the four lowest birth rates in the EU. When you don't have consumers and you don't have workers coming into your society, you can't build your economy. Lots of consumers, lots of new workers, great for your economy. That's coming to an end. Now, the competition. I said before, boomers were the most competitive generation. And that's not because they just were born with some gene that made them super competitors. It was the fact that by the time you got out of college, you know, the old gentleman's C, if you got a college degree, you'd go work for a corporation. You know, if you had middling grades, that was okay as long as you had a degree. That was gone. By the 70s, boomers are trying to get jobs in corporations. And every place they apply, there's 10 more college-educated boomers applying for the same job. So the way you got ahead was to outwork peers. So oldest boomers turn 25, and look what happens to dual-income couples. In a 10-year period, right in here, the population of the United States grew 10%. The workforce, you always hear about that with the unemployment reports, right? How big is the workforce? Are people coming back into the workforce, leaving the workforce? 10% growth in population, 30% growth in working adults. From women pouring into the workforce. So we have more people. They're more educated. More of them are working than ever worked before. And they're more productive. At the beginning of the 1980s, Gordon Gekko era, greed is good. We had expanded the average white-collar work week from 40 to 54 hours. So those two factors, plus we're all working harder. So, all generalizations are just that. I know slacker boomers, I know hard-working Xers, but generally speaking, the characteristics of the boomer generation are we are what we own and we are what we do. Success is measured by our title, our position in life, and the material trappings we have around us. Okay, part two. How did that affect small business? Same thing. See this graph again? 1976, the first boomers turned 30. They're all running out to get corporate jobs. They all want the corner office. Guess what? Not enough corner offices. So they start going into business for themselves. In numbers not only never seen before, but not seen since. On all these curves, you'll see when the boomers finish, it's pretty flat. Number of new business formations is pretty flat. So boomers pour into business. This is a slide I took out for time. But from 1976 to 1983 or 84, the number of franchises sold annually in the United States went up by 1,000%. Because people like Howard Johnson and Colonel Sanders were offering a deal that said, look, if any of you have ever worked in restaurant retail, it's rough. And they were saying, look, you don't have to have a whole lot of money. We'll get you into business for yourself, and you can earn the same income as if you got the corner office in the corporation. Boomers loved it. And not only did they love it for the opportunity, they loved going to the franchises because they didn't have any time. They were working 54 hours a week. So the velocity of money increases. This is a fifth factor. We now have 5 huge factors impacting the productivity of the boomers. The velocity of money, if any of you remember economics, is the faster it passes off. You know, I give money to Jack, and he turns around and gives it to you, and he gives it to you, and that all goes into the GDP, right? Every time we change hands, it's another good or service for the gross domestic product. So we've got all these franchisees, we've got all these boomers working their tails off. This guy's cutting lawns 50 or 60 hours a week so he can put his kid in karate class. The karate teacher's teaching classes as many as he can fit so he can send his kids to Sylvan Learning because he doesn't have time to help with the homework. He's working 50 or 60 hours a week. And the woman with the Sylvan Learning franchise has to hire somebody to come and clean the house because she's working 50 or 60 hours a week. See what this does to the velocity of money? It just keeps moving along. So, the boomers create the longest sustained period of economic growth in the history of the world. 40 years without a major setback. And it's coming to an end. Not because the next generations are bad. They just aren't as big. There isn't as much room for them to grow. So part 3, this is the marketplace. Who are we going to sell our companies to? Because we still own almost 2/3 of the privately held enterprises that employ people in the United States. Of the 9 million businesses with 5 employees or more, we own between 5.5 and 6 million of them. And the youngest of us are 55 years old. This is just starting. This is the tip of the iceberg. And there are 3 problems: psychographic trends, demographic trends, and sociographic trends. Plus, it's just a lot tougher to be in business today. A lot of times when we're talking to another generation about coming into business, they look at all this stuff. They look at the regulation. For us, it's been a slippery slope, right? Oh, there's another regulation. Oh, I've got to get another permit. Oh, I have to file for another license. Oh, I used to be able to do that. I just found out I can't do that anymore. But you bring in somebody that doesn't know business, and they're going, I have to do what? To get hit with it all at once is a big load. So, the demographic gap, that's simple. 78 million boomers, 48 million Gen X, 80 million millennials. Gen X is the prime business buying age, 35 to 55-ish, 54-ish right now. But there's 30 million too few to replace the boomers. Not even considering that because of this whole franchise effect and the lack of room in corporate America, the boomers are about 2.5 times more likely per capita to own a business than any generation before or since. So we're disproportionately business owners with not nearly enough people behind us to take all that over. And the millennials are delaying the decisions. Millennials are now, the oldest ones are in their 30s, and a lot of them aren't married yet. When they do get married, they're delaying having children. They've got school debt, they've got, they buy everything on time. The housing, purchasing first homes is much delayed. So the millennials are not even in a position to think about being in business for themselves yet. The Xers who should be just don't have enough people. That's the first issue. The second issue is psychographic. And how many boomers here have complained about the work ethic of the younger generation? Yeah, the rest of you are lying. Because we've all done it, right? It's not a work ethic. It's a values question. We raise them with a different set of values. So they work to live, not live to work. They don't want 54-hour weeks. They're not interested in it. During the Great Recession, I was working with a bunch of business owners, and in one, we went to his Gen X millennial workforce, and we said, we'd really like to not lay people off. How many people would be willing to cut back to a 32-hour week? No problem. For the entire rest of the recession, we didn't lay anybody off in any business. We just kept going to the younger employees and saying, how would you like to cut back to a 32-hour week? Fine. Great. 3-day weekends every weekend? You got it. I can live on less money if I have my time off. Really an eye-opener for me. Less interest in material accumulation. Grunge. hip-hop, nobody wants designer, well, hip-hop maybe, but nobody's going for designer labels on their jeans anymore as their principal source of pride. And the upper socioeconomic brackets are being supported by their boomer parents. How many boomers do you know that are funding their married kids' lifestyle? Right? I want my grandchildren to go to private school. Well, Dad, we can't afford private school. That's okay, we'll pay for it. I'd like the whole family to get together at Disneyland. That'd be neat if we could all be together. Dad, we can't afford a trip to Disneyland. That's okay, we'll pay for it. And how many of these kids are living a style that they couldn't afford on their salaries? Plus, an estimated $17 trillion in inheritance. That's 1 year of gross domestic product. All the goods and services produced in the United States for an entire year is equivalent to what the boomers have in assets right now to hand off. And I'm talking to a lot of younger people in their 30s and 40s, and I'm saying, well, what are you going to do? You've got a decent job, you get paid and stuff, but, what about, moving into, a more comfortable lifestyle? Oh, well, I hate to say this, but sooner or later, Mom and Dad are going to die. And we're going to get a lot. Sociographic data. Since 2008, the number one concern of international Fortune 1000 CEOs is replacing boomers in management. The number one concern for the last 11 years. What are we going to do to get these people to take over these positions that these people worked 55 hours a week to create and put themselves in? Corporations can deal with this. Flexible hours, telecommuting, paid time off, job sharing, portable benefits, paid external interests. How many of those things do you have in your companies? You're going to go to your employees and say, I think it would be good for your mental health to take a 6-month sabbatical. We'll pay you. We'd like to pay for your outside interests. We encourage you to take 2 or 3 days off a month to go work on a community project. And some of us do it, but most of us can't. Most of us have one person that does that job, right? And if that person's not there, we do that job, right? So we can't afford to compete with this. And the corporations know, they've known for over a decade that they need to chase these people and they need to restructure to make this more accommodating to the lifestyles of Gen X and the millennials. And we small business owners are trucking along saying, yeah, well, someday I'm just going to sell my company to somebody who wants to work their butts off just like me. Nope, not going to do it. Lack of capital. Who's going to buy your business? Gen X grew up with debt. They've had credit cards since they were teenagers. Money is to make payments. Buy now, pay later. Since the 1980s, started with American Express, and MasterCard and Visa jumped right in. The entire drumbeat of advertising has been not having something you want now is stupid. Why would you suffer along and save up until you can buy it when you can have it today? You're going to pay for it anyway. And so we built this credit economy where everybody, not everybody, but the younger generations are certainly parsing out their paychecks as far as mentally as payments, budget payments, or payment budgets, sorry. And built-in financing is expected. We're seeing Gen X entrepreneur wannabes come in and look at companies. I work with a lot of business brokers. I used to be a business broker at one point. And they come in and they say, I like that company. I think that's worth $1 million. We say, great. How you want to do this? Well, I've saved up $25,000. I'm not kidding. So all you have to do is figure out how I can pay off the other $975,000, and we've got a deal. They expect you to have financing. Because everybody's always had financing. Every time they liked the car, every time they liked the stereo, every time they wanted to go somewhere on vacation, somebody was willing to step up and finance that for them. And they're getting to business ownership age and they think the same thing's supposed to happen again. So, given all that, having thoroughly depressed you about the market situation, how do you attack this? How do you move down the road when your time comes? Obviously, we're talking about planning here. There are a bunch of possibilities. You have to know your options. If we were doing a planning process right now, well, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to look at your options and see what is practical and what isn't. Okay, sell to a third party. 85% of business owners say they're going to sell to a third party. The International Business Broker Association admits to a success rate of 20% of their listings. 1 out of 5 businesses that are actually listed ever sell. Not good odds, if that's the only plan you have. Sale to employees, ESOPs, LBOs, seller financing. For most of the people in this room, I doubt an ESOP is an option. Probably ideal size right now is 100 employees and $1 million in cash flow annually after owner comp. But there are some laws coming up in the new Congress that could greatly reduce the expense of ESOPs and make them a much more practical solution, but that hasn't happened yet. Sale to family. Obviously, some people have another generation coming into the business. So then you've got to plan the gifting estate and the tax issues. Liquidation. It's a legitimate way to get out of your business. It's to liquidate. It's to close it down. If you're in a business where you do everything, it's a job. And when you leave the job, it's unlikely somebody else is going to want that job. But you can get a competitor or a vendor or a customer to take over the lists and maybe your equipment. And then involuntary resignation. If you leave with one iota of wisdom today, is you will all leave your business sooner or later, whether you want to or not. It's inevitable. Distance to goal. So we're starting to plan. First we look at the options. What's out there? What can we do? Then we look at what we have. This point here is where you are today. You have a certain amount of money saved up. Maybe you've got some income property. Maybe you've got some stocks and bonds, portfolios, 401k is simple. Okay, that's where you start. And then you look, and it's a simple triangulation. This is how much money I want to leave with, and I want to be done by 2021. This is what I want to do. And then you start doing the scenarios and figure out whether that's practical or not. In some cases, if the date is more important, I have to be out of here by 2021, it may mean less money. If the money is more important, it may mean a couple more years. Actually, a number of people, a large number of people I work with, find out that they're there already. And they're really still on a hamster wheel, and they don't even have to be. Once they have a good financial planner explain to them exactly what it's going to look like long term. One of those scenarios is going to be yours. Prospective buyers. People say, oh, well, I'm going to sell to a private equity group. I'm going to sell to, a strategic. So I had a contractor come to me a couple of years ago, electrical contractor, and he said, I want you to find me a strategic buyer. I said, great. What's your strategic differentiation? Why would somebody pay top dollar premium for your company? Well, we do a lot of work. Yeah, and what happened if you didn't bid the next job? Well, somebody else would bid. Okay, so you have no differentiation. You just bid, and if you're the low bidder, you get it. And who's going to pay you a premium for being the low bidder? That's why construction companies do so many internal transfers. So, entrepreneurs, down here, these are people that are buying a means to a living. Industry buyers, professional investors, those private equity groups, got to have about 1.2, 1.3 million in cash flow every year to get them to even look at you because their paperwork is exhaustive. By the way, this is, I've got it up there at yourexitmap.com. This is animated and narrated if you want to look at it again. The strategic buyers pay the most, but you really have to have something strategic. This is the neutral zone. This is usually companies between 5 and 15 or 20 million. They make good money, they've got a decent management team, but they're not big enough for the strategic and private equity guys. They're too big for an individual to buy, and that's where I do most of my work. We've been doing a lot down here with entrepreneurs. We found a streamlined program that we can use with that. Special challenges in your industry, 99% of photo imaging businesses are entrepreneurial level businesses. Does everybody agree with that? Okay. Somebody's going to buy your business to work in it. Okay. Brokerage databases report 0 successful sales in the broker community in the last 11 years. I'm not saying none sold, but in the intermediary market, they haven't sold any. So the odds of going out and finding a third party who just thinks he wants to be in the photo imaging business are long. Not non-existent, but long. Buyers who've seen high-profile failures, you recognize the brand names up there, they're all gone. And banks know it too. So they're scared of your industry. And like I said, don't feel you're alone. They're also scared of the IT service industry. Nobody has servers anymore. It's all in the cloud. I'm doing the same thing with IT folks. So where does that leave you? You can sell your assets to a competitor. You're going to get 10 to 35% of your equipment value. You can get 10% a year for 3 years on your customer list. Or you can do an internal sale to employees or family. Probably get more value. You can choose your timing. It gives you a lot of flexibility. And you can secure most of the purchase price before you leave the business if you plan far enough in advance. Okay, putting together a plan. We're going to talk about internal plans because that is most likely for many of you. Just like a construction company. When we sell a construction company to the employees, family, of course, we assume family in the business, but when we sell them to employees, they don't worry about the things third-party buyers worry about. They don't worry about the fact that you've got to bid every day. They've been working for the company for 15, 20 years. Yeah, we bid every day. We get jobs every day. That's how it works. It doesn't concern me. I'm not bothered by it. You know, an outsider comes in and says, if he leaves, I may never get another bid again. I could pay millions of dollars and have nothing. So employees are comfortable with the environment. They get it. The problem is they have no money, which is a drawback. So in a third-party sale, you're going to go through all this stuff. Confidentiality, market valuation, we talked about classes of buyers, post-closing price adjustments, add-backs, growth strategies. If you're trying to sell to a third party, he wants to know how he's going to grow the business to be much more successful than it was when you had it. That's the only reason people buy businesses, because they intend to make more money than you made. Every buyer on the planet is smarter than every seller on the planet. That's assumed. So when you're talking about an internal sale, a third-party sale, we'll look at all these things. In an internal sale, you've got far fewer issues. Cooperative valuation. We're going to work with what we have. The buyer and the seller are going to sit down together and figure out something that works for us. Cash flow measurements are key. Seller financing options. I'll talk about those a little bit on what you can do. Handcuffs and clawbacks, you still have to have some of that. And lifestyle or legacy. One of the decisions you have to make as an owner is, am I shooting for a certain lifestyle, or am I more concerned that my customers, my employees, my reputation in the community is maintained the way I want it maintained? So many people come to me and say, I want to sell my company to a third party. By the way, I want them to guarantee that they're going to continue to employ the following people for the rest of their career. And I want them to keep the same name over the door. And I want them to be donating to the same charities we're doing. The day you sell it, you have no control over any of that. That stops. So you've got to decide how important your legacy is. And I deal with a lot of owners. It's more important than the actual amount of cash they get out of the company. They're not that worried about the cash. They're worried about what happens after they're gone. Cash flow measurements, we're going to talk about that again in a second. There's one thing I can't plan around. I want more. What your business produces is what your business produces. Whether a third party is going to buy it to use that cash flow to pay a loan back, whether it's going to provide a living for the owner that follows you, that cash flow is that cash flow, and it determines the value of your company. If it's not enough, the answer is you have to have more cash flow. Can't do anything about that. People say, well, you say my company's worth that much. I'm not selling for that. And this happens to me a lot. Okay, why not? Well, because I have plans for my retirement that are a lot more expensive than that. Sorry. Not much I can do, but I get that all the time. So, determining reasonable valuation. Fair market value is irrelevant. Fair market value is defined as the price paid by a willing buyer to a willing seller, given that both have the same information. It doesn't matter what fair market value is. We're now talking in an internal sale about a very personal transaction. I need to make a living. I need enough to walk away with. You want this business. And if I can get the business and the cash flow of this business into your hands in a way that doesn't ruin your lifestyle or strap you under ungodly debt for the next 20 years, then you should be happy to pay me whatever this business can generate, because you're going to wind up with a cash cow. So, what does the seller need to retire? How much cash flow does the buyer need to operate and live? So you can't scoop it all out of the company, because the buyer coming in needs to be able to live off of it. And how much can the company support? Asset versus stock sale, very quickly. Over 90% of sales to third parties are asset sales. Something like 3/4 of all the internal sales that we do are stock sales. It's a better deal for the seller because it's capital gains instead of ordinary income. And again, third parties don't want to buy the stock because they inherit the liabilities of the company. So if you did something terrible to somebody 10 years ago, and I buy your corporation, and they come back and sue, I'm in the hot seat. That came with the company. Again, internal, employees, family, not worried about buying stock. We know what this company did. We didn't get sued yesterday, we're not going to get sued tomorrow. So they're not concerned about the liabilities. If you're trying to increase the cash flow for installment payments, you may want to consider an asset sale, because whatever they pay you for the assets, they can start to depreciate again. You'll see depreciation obviously impacts cash flow. In a stock sale, you're reducing the cash flow for the buyer, but you basically have no security. I see it in seller financing, and that's why I say try and get as much out up front as you can. I see way too many situations where a business owner says, I've had it, I'm throwing my hands up, you want this company, Jack, you want my company? Here, take it, give me a note, and just pay me every quarter, and I'll be happy. And you pay me for 2 or 3 quarters, so I stop looking at the books and I don't worry about it. And then about 6 or 8 quarters down the road, the check doesn't come, and I call up and I say, what's the problem? Well, we aren't doing too good, actually. Business has been going down. We can't afford. Too late. You can't take the company back then. You've got nothing. If you've already, it's slippery slope. If you've already decided that you're retired, you're not about to dive into a turnaround and try and rebuild what you built in the first place. So the 100% seller financing is something that's an issue. So we're looking at cash flow. Pre-tax profit plus add-backs. Depreciation, interest expense, the seller's wages, benefits, perquisites. Okay, all that stuff goes into your cash flow. Everything you're taking out of the company. Now, I know none of you are doing any extracurricular stuff here and still writing it off as business while you're here in Las Vegas. I haven't found out how to. My wife is real stickler with the books, so I haven't found out how to write off my gambling losses yet. I'm trying. But all that is the cash you have to work with. And it's not the price, it's the terms. The terms make all the difference. I need a volunteer. Who wants to volunteer to sell me their company? Somebody volunteer. Jack, you're going to sell me your company? Okay. Jack, I want to make you a deal. I don't know anything about your company, but I am willing to give you $5 million for your company. Will you take it?
It's the keys.
All right, good. Well, I'll go write that up. It's going to be for a non-interest-bearing promissory note, and I will pay you $10 every single day until it's paid off. How's that work? Yeah. If anybody's trying to do the math in their heads, I did that already. In order to have paid him off by today, I would have had to start this deal about when the Roman Empire fell. Thank you for your participation, Jack. So, seller financing. Prepayment. Simple agreement. I need to get another $500,000 out of this company. When I get that, we'll all work together to get it to me. We'll all work real hard to build up this business or keep this business growing and thriving. And when I get it, I walk. And I sell to you for $1 or $1,000 or whatever. So that's one way to do it. And maintain control until you walk away. Salary continuation. Look, I'm making $10,000 a month. I'm going to leave at this time, and you're going to continue to pay me $10,000 a month until I have X. And we know you have the cash flow for it because it's already paying me that much. So you're just going to have to step it up and take over my duties and work a little harder. And that's how you wind up earning the business, is by continuing with salary. Installment sales, if you are going to take a note, remember that you don't owe tax until you receive the money. So a lot of times we use installments just to stretch out the tax liability and make it lower. Sweat equity. The buyer, employee, family starts buying while you're still there, and the cash flow that they're getting from the business, if it's a flow-through, if it's an S-corp or an LLC or a partnership, the cash flow they get, they use to pay a note down to you until they have built up enough equity in the business, usually around 25 or 30%, and then they can go for an SBA loan because now they've proven they can run the business, they've proven the business has sufficient cash flow to service the note, and you're probably going to take about 20% of it back subordinated to the SBA, but if you can walk away with 80% of the money for your company on the day you walk away, that's a hell of a lot lower risk than just taking a note for it. And then self-casing installment note skins, that's usually in a family situation. A lot of people don't know about them. That's when you take a note for the business and it's at higher than normal interest rates. And the delta, the added interest rate, is considered a de facto insurance policy without an insurance company. So let's say loans are 6%-ish right now. I'll take a note for 10% interest only, and when I pass away, the note's dissolved. Use that a lot in family transactions. Basically, the interest payment is like continuing salary. I'll just take that amount of money, especially in families, because we don't want to put a tail end on it. A lot of times, this mom or dad needs that income forever. So we will continue to pay. It may not be your full salary. Okay, so this business will continue to pay you as tax-deductible interest, $3,000 a month or $5,000 a month until you pass away, and then they get the step-up in basis in the estate and the notes dissolved. So there's lots of tax tricks when you're doing a family transfer that are more flexible than what you can do in an employee transfer. But a lot of these tools, and in film and managed transaction, we've used several of these to help make that work. Handcuffs and clawbacks, lock buyers in for the process. That's why I like the sweat equity deal where you're sharing equity and selling it off before you leave. You're sorry, Amanda, you're handcuffing the employees because now they're going to have a substantial loss if they walk away from the company. Get them into the ownership mindset, get them working together with you. It can be a powerful, powerful thing. So many of these, when we do the deal, When we're done, the employees and the owners are sitting there, and they look at each other, and once it's all explained, and they've got it all figured out, and it's all papered, they look at each other and go, cool. So all we have to do is work our tails off and grow this company, and we're all going to come out really, really well. Let's go. You know, it's nice to have the whole team on board with that. If the buyer defaults, I already said that, you probably don't want to back front load as much as possible before the transfer. 3 to 5 years is a good planning window. When people come to me with 8 to 10, I almost kiss them. 1 is really tough. When I was a broker, I used to get those all the time. Okay, I'm fed up with this business. I'm going to let you sell it. And can you have me out in 30 days? No. No, I can't. Sorry. Can't even do the paperwork in 30 days. So back to the lifestyle and the legacy. Your legacy as a seller is the lifestyle of the people coming in the internal transfer, the people that have worked for you, or the people who are your children. Their lifestyle is your legacy. And you can take pride in that because you built the thing that is going to make them a decent living. Internal sales are cooperative. Everything has to be open book. Everything has to be transparent to both parties. There's no, once in a long, long while, I'll hit a prospective client that says, I know my company is only worth $2 million. I want to charge the employees $5. No. You can't support it. They're getting ripped off. And that's where all the bad stories about ESOPs come from. You've heard a lot, if you haven't, in this industry, you hear a lot of bad stories about ESOPs because they get a trustee to approve it. They appoint an employee trustee and get him or her to improve a sale price that is far more than the company's worth. And when the employees get in, they find out a year down the road that they're screwed, that they can't make the payments. So it's got to be a win-win. It's got to be a win-win for everybody. You don't want them hating you after you go, because you're not going to get paid. Sooner or later, we're all going to exit our businesses. You have 2 choices. You can plan for the inevitable, or some people just like a surprise. That's okay. Okay, we have 3 resources I'm putting up here just for you to look at. Awake at 2 o'clock is my blog. I've been writing it for 12 years. It's just for business owners, and it's just about exit planning. And I've never had to explain to a business owner why I call it Awake at 2 o'clock. Your Exit Map, same title as the book. There's a ton of stuff up here. It is all free. The triangulation tool I showed you, the video of the different buyers, spreadsheets, online spreadsheets where you can calculate your cash flow. All that stuff is up there. It's all free, and you're welcome to go. Please go and use it. We've got 5 million business owners exiting their businesses. I can't possibly handle it all. All the exit planners in the United States can't possibly handle it all. I have no problem with giving away this stuff if it helps people plan better. And then Your Exit Map is the book, and certainly encourage you to go about that. So, that said, I'm going to ask Mr. Cantor and Mr. Dominguez to come back.
So, I know it shows we only have 10 minutes left, but the trade shows and lunch doesn't start until 12:30. And I think, based on the people who approached me before, that there's probably a lot of questions about what we've done. So we can stay here for as long as you guys want before separate's done. We can talk. I'm Phil Cantor. This is Amanda Dominguez. I opened Digital Pro Lab when I was 26 years old. And since I want to go into a whole history, in 2006, I bought a building that was 2.5 times bigger than what we were in. And we moved the business there, and moved it there with the idea that the business needs to grow to justify this move to the building. And that was roughly, we were in there in 2007, and what happened shortly after. So I found myself in, actually, wondering whether or not I was going to stay in business, and talking with my CPA and talking with others and looking at everything. And what I could see was getting out of debt was the solution. We were paying over $12,000 a month to Noritsu on all of our machines. And my CPA kept telling me to buy another machine because you'll save on your taxes. It's paying taxes, it isn't it? I really wondered, did I make a good decision in buying this building? I was very concerned. Well, it took a few years. I got debt-free, completely 100% on my personal and my business, with the exception of real estate. Then we continue to go along, and I can see now that I'm debt-free and I'm doing things differently, that long-term, that this real estate becomes retirement. And I didn't, like I knew it, but didn't realize it when I did it. But it became a reality. And during that same time, we have these years of flat sales. So I'm trying different things. I feel like we're doing all the right stuff, but, I said, it seemed kind of flat. They're not really moving either direction. And everybody around me is telling me, well, you're not going down. That's great. I wasn't excited about that. So I've been asked by a lot of people, why do I want to sell a business? Why do I want to get out? And I just want to answer that question, which is I'm about the how of how to do things with my business, and it's always and when I first opened, it was a job, and I enjoyed it, and it was exciting, and I was aggressive and out there, and I was getting new customers and doing all this stuff, and just over time, everything seems to have changed, and I've noticed, if you've ever seen the Simon Sinek about the why. He does a TED Talk about people and the why of the business. I did realize I don't have the why. I'm not a why person. I'm a how person. And so I'm moving along, and I realize that I'm not going to be able to grow this business further. I can certainly keep it where it's at. I can do that, and I can do that for probably a long time, actually. But I look around in my life, and I see these things that I want to do that I never do because I'm always in this business. So people have asked me, what are you going to do afterwards? I don't know. But I wanted, I could see that that the real estate was going to support me financially for the most part. I have some other real estate investments whatever too, but I could see that. And so I did a few things. I sat down with a financial planner because I wasn't 100% sure that I was doing this right, and paid him to evaluate me. And he told me by age 59, you absolutely don't have to work. It sounds pretty neat. So I took his information, and I went to my CPA, and I said, this is the way I said everything. Because you don't want to just listen to this one guy. The CPA said, yeah, makes sense. And so then John has been my business coach with the Alternative Board. He runs our group. Been talking to him, and he basically specializes in exit planning and for businesses. And so we started developing this plan. And all along, now I'm going to go back 20 years ago or so when Ray comes to work for me, who's not here today. Ray, my nickname for him was the sponge. I could hand him anything. He'd learn it, he was great at it, he could do it, he was always bringing more. And I get a little emotional. So Amanda comes to work for me as well. I knew her father. And so her and Ray meet there, working together. She was she was younger, she looks young now, but she's actually older than she looks.
It started 16 years ago.
Yeah. So, Ray's been there roughly 20-something years. She's been 16 years. They're so smart. I can recognize that they can do this, and they can do it better than me. And they also would have the why, what I have. And I'm going to shut up for a minute and let her talk.
Yeah, Amanda, you made a decision to buy the business. Amanda's married to Ray. Key point there. As Phil said, it wasn't growing. It's made him a nice living, but he's not driving the latest Tesla or taking off to his vacation home in the mountains or whatever. It's not that kind of living. What made you decide that this was a business that you wanted to run for the rest of your career?
So there were a lot of reasons actually, and a lot of them actually from the presentation. I go over some of those, but I started 16 years ago when I was 17.
Can everybody hear?
No, it's not.
I started when I was 17, and I'm older now, right? There was a period after I graduated from college where I asked Phil if I could go and do volunteer work. He allowed me to do that, and I found that even though I loved the company, I needed to explore other options for myself. Went to go work for Catholic Charities for quite a few years and helped people, taught people, worked in the development department for them, so I raised a lot of money for them to event grant writing, etc. And in that environment, it was very, very difficult, which I loved the challenge. I loved everything about helping people, but there was still something missing. I missed my husband, who I worked with for a very long time. We had gotten married before I made the transition out of digital collab. And there was just something missing. The culture in the company that I had been working for a while wasn't the same. I missed the team spirit and camaraderie of digital collab. I missed the mentorship that I had from Phil. And I made a decision about 4 years into a very successful career with a nonprofit to make a change. And I came to Phil and asked if he could be part of that change for me. And he said, you know what? Come back. Do whatever you want to do with this company. Just come back. You have a culture. And he allowed me to come back, and I started first doing marketing for the company, and then again doing sales, and then teaching, and then getting into all of the equipment. What I started to see there was my husband was there. I could see him all the time. Wasn't working until 2 o'clock in the morning, although I do think about it. 2 o'clock in the morning on grant writing. I had this amazing learning environment that I missed in the time that I was a digital pro at the beginning. I was there through the digital age, so from film to digital, and now we're seeing digital back to film again now. And I love the environment a lot. It's very challenging for me. I'm very driven. I'm very ambitious, and I think it fulfills all of those needs for me, which is part of my why and separate. But to your point, I think, John, what was it? Work to live to work or to live. So that's a part of it. I was at Catholic Charities working to live to a point, and now I actually love working, but because my life is there with my husband, because I'm helping the community that I grew up in San Antonio. I see people's stories every single day. My background, as far as college goes, was not in business. My degree is in history. I have a degree in philosophy. So history for me is a days of our deadline. Oh, please.
As far as the details of what we did is based off of my son graduating high school at, whenever that is, when he's 13, going to college, and based off of when real estate is paid off, I came up with that I wanted to take a couple of years to figure out what it is I want to be when I grow up. And so we did the sweat equity option of, it was very important for me for whatever we do that they're not out of pocket, they're not having to, even the attorney documents, I felt bad because they had to pay a separate attorney to look at our documents, and that didn't come out of their pocket. But I don't want any of this deal to cost them. I want the business to pay for it. And so right now we set up a deal that got them to 40% pretty quickly. It was the plan of ownership. And that 40% ownership pays their portion of the value that we came up with on the business, is the way to look at it. And essentially, all I really was looking for out of this was 2 years of salary for me after they become the majority owner. So once they hit 51%, I want to draw a salary for 2 years and not be expected to be in my dungeon. But they do know that whenever we get to a point where I'm out the door, when they want to go to home Italy again or wherever they want to go vacation for a week or two or whatever, that I'm going to come in and work for free. And the other thing that was important for me is that when I do leave, they do have a 5-year lease as a tenant, because that is part of my income financial plan. Long term, what I would encourage them to do is during that 5 years to be saving and to buy some real estate of their own and to make that move. And if they're not ready at 5 years, we need to go monthly review, whatever. But I'm very flexible on everything that we've done. Amanda sets she took over the employee hiring and the scheduling, so she sets my schedule now. You have to be willing to become an employee, and you have to put any ego aside or whatever you would call it that you might think, well, I was learning. You need to be just open to make everything work and make everything happen and make sure that it works for everybody. Questions?
Yeah.
Yes.
2 things. How do they come to 40% quickly? And the other is rent from your building that they're occupying, is that a good portion of your retirement, do you think?
I had determined that without the 2 years of payments after I leave, that I could still retire based off everything else that I had going on. And the rent from the real estate is the biggest portion. The commercial real estate is completely paid off in 2021.
Oh, on the building.
Yeah, so in other words, I'll have a debt-free, I'll be completely debt-free, including real estate in 2021.
But the rent from the building that they have a 5-year lease on is a good portion of your retirement.
Yes.
Are they occupying the entire building?
Yes.
How do they come to get to 40%?
It was a stock sale for a note, so as they use their distributions to pay down the note, Phil only pays taxes on it at capital gains rate when he receives the money from it. Phil is exceptionally generous, and I got to say, in a side note, Digital Pro Lab just had its 30th, right? 25th anniversary, and they had a celebration for all their customers that I was privileged to attend. And Phil was shocked because, as usual, Amanda planned the whole thing and told him nothing about it. And he didn't realize it was going to be a tribute to Phil. And old employees coming back, parents of old employees coming back, talking about when they worked there. It was really, really phenomenal. So understand that Phil really appreciates a debt-free lifestyle and is willing to write off anything that they don't pay. Although, and Amanda knows this, so it's not a secret. He's limited it to 2 years. I think they can afford to pay longer and better, but this is his choice to confine it that way. So, very quickly, a couple of years, 10% tranches of selling them stock, and any distributions that come back, they pay the taxes, and 100% of those distributions go back to Phil as payments on that stock. And it may or may not be all paid off by the time he walks away. He's not particularly concerned about that. Obviously, lots of other plans, people are concerned about that, but it really just becomes a technical issue to work through that.
The distributions are the profits that are happening
Yes.
in the business.
Yeah.
And there's even the way John wrote it that, what happens if sales go down and it can't be paid? And so he's got a sliding scale that brings the payments down, but I had the wrong attorney draw the paperwork. He drew up, so many pages, ridiculous. And I just don't care about the paperwork. I don't care about what the agreement says. I've been really clear up front the whole way of what it is I want and what I'm willing to do to make all that work. And that's, you can't do this with somebody that you don't truly know. The way I'm doing it, at least, I think. Or at least I would be successful.
Yeah, one piece of advice is you've got to have the right advisors. If your CPA only does tax returns, he's not equipped to handle transactions. If your estate planning lawyer only does wills and trusts, he's not equipped to handle transactions. There are it's a different knowledge base. In Phil's case, he wanted to use the attorney that is helping with his real estate, and the guy wrote every stack was like this because he wrote every 10% transfer as if it was a real estate closing, with all the due diligence and crap that goes into a real estate and escrow and everything. And it's not necessary to do that. That's why you want people that know how to do it and how to do it right.
Other questions? An open book, so feel free. There we go.
Okay, I'm just trying to get this straight. So, kind of from my point of view, an outsider, what would be the difference of like maybe just waiting out the 2 years and running the business on your own for the next those 2 years, and then when the 2 years is done, you could just bring your money for the same amount of rent.
Sure.
Your business would just go, away.
So if I had any kind of why thinking at all, it is about the realization that we serve San Antonio as the place to go.
So then that's why.
It's just not enough to get me motivated to do what really needs to be done, and they got it. I mean, it's just so right.
So in a way, it's like you fell in love with your employees so much. It's such a great friendship. You love your business so much. You kind of just slowly handed it over to them so that you can slowly walk away and just you feel good about that.
That's why 3 times in the presentation you said lifestyle or legacy.
Yeah.
Phil's a legacy case. It's not about how much he can squeeze out.
Yeah, so.
Yeah, if you're somebody who freaks out over, they owe me $5 or whatever, then you probably can't do this.
Well, and you're probably at a good point in your life where, like you said, you have real estate or whatever thing, so you looking forward to walking out in 2 years, you're set, feel comfortable. It's not necessarily here's how much my business is worth, I want this X amount of dollars, or I'm not selling. It's more of just a different story than I would expect when you think I want to sell my business, And so I think it's really neat, and I think you're very inspirational to all of us, because I think there's a lot of people aren't like you. you know, and so I think you guys are great. Both of you are great examples from an outsider, but I just wanted to like clarify if that's kind of what was going on, but we want to let you know. I'm not totally great, you know, but no, so I just think that's great.
Sounds like the dynamics are different for different people. I mean, if we don't own the real estate, if we don't have other investments, it's going to play differently for us. And whether we sell to an employee or transition to a family member, whatever, everyone is unique and different, I think. Is that right?
Oh, yeah. There are no two cases alike. I probably do between 10 and 12 a year, and none of them have any relation to any of the others. We're starting with a blank sheet of paper on every one of them. And some I can't make come true. I had a printer bring me in 2 years ago, and he said, I want to pass the company on to my son, and we need the money, the value of the company to fund our retirement. We have not saved sufficiently. And first I need you to come in here, and I know you do coaching, and my son is a ne'er-do-well who shows up at 10:30 in the morning and goes home at 3 o'clock in the afternoon and pisses off every employee, and is nasty and vicious and spends money like water. And I need you to straighten him out so he can buy us out. And I was like, some things are just beyond my...
You should have done that years ago.
Yeah.
Is there a compelling reason why in 5 years they should move the business as opposed to continue to lease that with a liability from it?
Just for their own retirement, and in other words, it works, it looks, I can't say it works so well because I'm not there yet, but to me, I see it and it looks like it works, and it seems to me that for them to be able to retire one day as well, they really need to do the same thing, because they're not going to be able to just find somebody who wants to buy their business. They had to learn all the stuff that I've had to learn over the years. She had to learn, she's taken on roads. She's, taken on electricity. She's got the back end part of it all. She's taken on the digital press. Ray's got the Ritzus, so they're taking on and mounting and wide format printing and all the stuff that Ray does. Sublimation. They've got all that, and you're not going to find somebody that's going to come buy that from you. So, I don't want them to take this business over and have it be a bad thing for them. I want them to, if they were like, Phil, we made $350,000 last year in profit, and we paid ourselves, $350,000. I'm going to be ecstatic, okay? But long term, I guess you could say it's the father in me. I think they should buy their own real estate and have that portfolio.
Is there a reason you're thinking that they should look elsewhere for a building?
They might buy my building, but I don't know that I would want to sell it. I don't.
Yeah.
Right now, I look at it as my retirement, so it's kind of hard to say I want to sell it.
Yeah.
You get right first right of refusal in there, so if something comes up or whatever, they will always have the first crack at it. But
I'd be surprised if the building didn't become the second stage of this transition in 5 or 6 or 7 years. And starting to buy it. Well, if you stay down another 2, 3, and then 5 more on that, in 7 or 8 years, I would expect it's going to turn into the transition of buildings.
yeah, it's possible. Right now, I see it as okay, it's good income, long term.
Yeah.
So
How old are you, Phil? How old are you?
I just turned 52.
52. Oh, so you switched.
Well, I do and I don't. It really, by 2021, the financial planner said by 59, absolutely don't have to work. But by 2021, when that commercial real estate's paid off, I feel like today I technically could live off of what I make. Without to be honest, I'm not on payroll right now. So I technically can live on where I'm at today. And by the way, why I'm not on payroll? I wanted to build them a cash reserve that is, and we have to figure all that out, but right? They can't just take it over and not, have a good cash reserve to run it. So I did it specifically so that we can build it to a point where they can take it over. So people ask me, when have you gone? And my answer is between today and 2024, because the documents are written to kick me out by 2024 if I'm still there, which I won't be.
Phil has the first option to get out, and if he doesn't exercise it, the transfer of the majority. 4 years later, Ray and Amanda have the option to buy him out whether he likes it or not. So he can't stay around forever.
And I should also say that they have an out at any point. This was not written to trap them in any way. There's multiple ways for them to say, we're done.
And Phil is unusual, I just wanted to say that. We had an awful lot of discussions where I'm going, Phil, you don't need to be this generous. You don't have to give them this much room. You don't. And he kept saying, I want to. So it's not that the business couldn't have supported a more traditional type of purchase. It could. There were other things we could have done instead. So please don't listen to what Phil's saying and say, oh, well, the whole point of presentation is you have to give your damn company away. No, that's not the way it has to go.
John, I have a question for you. Why didn't you have us take our sharp objects away from us when we came to the room?
It's good news. You can get out. You can get out. It's and as I was saying before to some people that had come along, I just gave an article to the American City Business Journals that I asked for, and it talks about options. If you don't know what your options are, then the sooner or later becomes a factor. As brokers, in the brokerage industry, they kid about the dismal Ds. I don't know if anybody's ever heard of them. Why companies change hands. Death, disease, disability, divorce, dissension among the partners, decline in sales, disinterest by the owner, and there's a couple of more, but none of them are good. And if you don't know your options, if you don't have an idea of the road you want to take, one of those will do it for you.
I would encourage all of you to be thinking now about later. When I hired Amanda back, I can't say that I had it in my mind that I was going to sell or that they were going to take it over, but I think I did. I don't know. I can't really say. I definitely wasn't thinking that in those back then. But plan ahead.
Not to do any fill, but for the ones that we fill out the basic math thing online.
I have them here.
Oh, you have them?
Yeah, I have them with me. Sure, be happy to give them to you. Anybody who didn't get to do it online, you can still go to your exit map. If you did it, I've got the reports here. If you want to do it, go to your exit map and take it, and you'll get the 12-page assessment, and I will send you the 40-page analysis. No problem. And I've got some trifolds up here, some little brochures with some of the graphs and stuff that are in here and some of the baby boomer stats. But the book is it's got skillions of baby boomer factoids, they call them. I don't know what a factoid is. That's a fact that isn't really a fact. So, anyway.
In your afternoon class, you go pretty much the same.
Same thing, same content. Okay?
Thank you.
Have a 10 minutes still?